My name is Dan Dorval, and I'm President and CEO of Dorval and Chorne Financial Advisors. I am an independent certified financial planner and author of my book, Financial Success for the Rest of Us, Reality-Based Financial Planning for Mainstream America.
Hi, my name is Leah Woodley. I'm an associate financial advisor with Dorval and Chorne Financial Advisors. Our conversations discuss what it means to do quality of life planning in all areas of your life.
Dan, when I started, I was introduced to the hierarchy of cash flow. I thought, wow, this reminds me of something like Dave Ramsey's baby steps. Not because it's the same, but just because it presents a step by step approach to managing your finances. I think that works because ultimately, most people just want you to tell them what they should be doing with their money. And the hierarchy of cash flow does that for them. So, how was the hierarchy of cash flow developed, and at what point did you start incorporating it into your practice?
Yeah, it's a great question because when I first started, I wasn't really trained on anything with financial planning or advice. So much of the world back then was centered on different investments or insurances and how do you promote products and things like that. And as I worked with more and more people, I realized that we were all of these people were being bombarded with kind of the noise of the world around them, and they had this sense of like a fear of missing out. So they were trying to do everything at the same time, and they were finding that overwhelming. They were failing, they weren't making progress. And so when they would come in, what I needed to do is kind of bring them back from trying to do everything all at once to how do I direct my actions, my resources in the most efficient and effective way to start making progress towards something. And so when I wrote my book back in 2003 and published it in 2004, I started to work into this idea that we need to accomplish steps. And the hierarchy of cash flow was born. And it was particularly effective for younger generations, so 20 somethings, 30 somethings, where they're coming out of school, they're starting a career, but they also have a bunch of major life events. So they might be starting a family, they might be buying a house. There's all these major life goals that occur at that time. And they were finding it complicated to accomplish all of them. And then we created the hierarchy to show them not only what their next step was, but also to measure where they are in the process and start to understand, hey, I'm really doing well along the way.
That is amazing. This is my first time actually hearing how you developed that. So, I just love that I've been able to get that background on how it was developed. And we have seen it benefit a lot of young and more senior nurses and other clients that we help. So it's definitely an effective tool. I think people, like I said earlier, just love that step by step approach, just knowing I'm supposed to be working on this at this time. I think that is definitely helpful. So, can you just walk us through exactly what the hierarchy of cash flow is?
All right, so at the very base, we start out with we want to make sure that everyone that has a match through their employer retirement plan is contributing at least enough to get that match. But what we see all the time is people are being convinced, especially young people, I need to be putting away 10, 15%. Maybe I need to be maxing out my 401k at work, but they don't have enough resources to be able to do that and still accomplish other important priorities along the way. So we start at the base by contributing just enough to get your match. Then the next level we move in starts to get into cash flow. And that is paying off any high interest debt that somebody has. Now, typically that's credit cards, but now, I mean, even some home mortgages. We ran into a mortgage on a second house yesterday that was at 7 7/8%. It's a pretty high interest rate on something even like a mortgage. We've also seen student loan debt that's at like 6.8%. Some private loans are even higher than that. So it might be more than just credit cards, but realistically, we're focused on credit card debt and cash flow in that second level. Now, paying off debt is an inherently more satisfying goal in financial planning than accumulating more. And yet the financial services world is focused mostly on having more. We are focused on needing less. Now, not wanting less, needing less. So if I can pay off debt and now I accomplish that goal, I now have more cash flow available to apply to other priorities. And that's an important step. Now, beyond that, the next step is also kind of a cash flow foundational step, and that is emergency reserves. And we want to accumulate enough cash so that, heaven forbid, we go through a tough spell in life and life gets pretty messy. We want to have cash to be able to navigate that difficult time. Now, that's not exactly sexy, it's not exactly exciting, but it's super important. Now, those first three, if somebody's done a great job on those first three, then we start moving into investments. And the next three levels start to get a little bit more like you can intermingle them. It's not exactly like I have to do the first one, then the second one, then the third one, but we start out with a Roth IRA. And in a perfect world, after you're getting your match at your employer, if you're within the income limits, we love for somebody to max out a Roth IRA. And it's because that Roth IRA is more flexible than their employer sponsored plan. And you've kind of talked about that in other videos on our channel. Then the next level is if we have goals that are not specifically retirement. So think about buying a house, maybe we're gonna, buy a cabin, maybe we're gonna start a business. I mean, there's all these different things that might happen prior to retirement. We want to create a bucket of money that's available for that. And that's a non-qualified investment account that we refer to loosely as a slush fund account. Again, you've got videos on our channel talking about what that is, how to set that up, and how that works. But that money is more intermediate. We're going to use that for a number of things. We might not even know for sure what those goals are yet. And then the very top level is now, if we've done all of these other steps, now we come back to our 401k or 403b, our employer sponsored plan, and now we increase contributions. And maybe we do work towards maxing out our plan if we have that kind of cash flow available. But for most of the people we help, they don't have that kind of income to spread around to all of these important goals and priorities.
I love that. Thank you for breaking it down for everyone, each and every step of the hierarchy of cash flow. I do have a question on level 2 when we're paying off debt. You said high interest debt. What interest rate would that look like? What interest rate is considered high interest?
Well, first off, we love paying down debt, even if it's lower interest. So a lot of times we'll focus on wanting that person to be debt free by the time they retire, which might mean paying off a mortgage. And that mortgage could be, from a few years ago, it might be 3% or something like that. We still love the idea from a cash flow perspective of paying off debt. But if somebody has credit card debt, anything above like 10% for sure, we are going to absolutely just focus all of the available income resources for that time, other than getting a match. We're going to focus all the available resources in paying that down as quickly as we possibly can. We might even use creative techniques like a 401k loan or other things that are more unusual, and we don't necessarily want to make that recommendation, but we sometimes do that because it's more efficient than paying down a high interest credit card debt. Now, when you get into like student loans, you get into maybe a higher interest mortgage. Now, anything above 6, 7, 8%, we might think in terms of balancing that out between different competing priorities. So we might still focus on paying off that debt, but we might also need to put money away for other things like kids' education. Maybe we'll be doing some Roth IRA at the same time, but that's more of a balancing act.
So if someone was near retirement and say they fell into that category where they have low interest debt, but it may be a significant amount of low interest debt, and maybe they have insufficient emergency reserves, would they fit into that class where we may do both? Or how would you advise that person or make a recommendation to that person.
Absolutely. Now you're getting into the nuance of financial planning because everybody is different. And I'll use an example to kind of illustrate. Like, for example, if I have a very large mortgage, in most cases, if you're getting closer to retirement, we know you probably don't have the resources to pay that off. So even though in a perfect world we would love for that to be paid off, we just simply can't get there without sacrificing a whole bunch of other things. In that scenario, we might say extend that debt as long as you can. So a lot of times that might be a 30-year mortgage instead of a 15-year mortgage. And that is to keep the cash flow lower so that when I retire, I don't feel like I'm cash poor just because I'm trying desperately to pay my mortgage off in 15 years. But those are the early years of retirement when I'm young and healthy and I want to do as much as possible, but my mortgage is killing me. Okay, so if my mortgage is smaller though, and of course this is dependent on each person, but if my mortgage is now in a manageable position where we could commit enough resources to realistically pay it off, in many cases we'll say aggressively go after that, because now if I'm debt free in retirement, I save all of that principal and interest payment that's associated with my mortgage, which means I need a lot less in retirement and I'll have more resources available for those things that I want to do, like travel or other hobbies or entertainment type of expenses.
And I think that advice you just gave, it signifies the importance of having a financial planner to talk to, because a financial planner will help guide a client through those different nuances and stuff like that. So that's great. One thing I do want to say is that the hierarchy of cash flow, while it does have step-by-step approaches like a Dave Ramsey, it is different. I know Dave Ramsey tells people to save $1,000 first and don't contribute anything to your retirement plan. And that differs, where we're telling people at least get that free money on the table. Don't leave that money on the table that your employer is offering. I think the focus on freeing up cash flow by paying off debt is similar, because that is something important. He's more so pay off everything, eat rice and beans until everything is paid off. And our focus is definitely more on quality of life. We want to make sure people have the quality of life that they want now as well as in the future. And I think that hierarchy of cash flow presents a very efficient way to do that.
I really do think that is the ultimate differentiator between what we do and what a lot of these other programs or systems or even other financial advisors do. Is this relentless focus on quality of life means that, hey, maybe for you, and if you're in your 20s, you're willing to live with your friends, maybe you are willing to eat rice and beans for a period of time to get ahead in life. But for most of us, that is not a sacrifice we're willing to make. And so it's all about your values and priorities and motivations, which is an ever-changing, evolving type of process. And that shows us that financial planning is something that's going to shift and evolve with your life over time as well. So when we started to really focus on quality of life, things like the hierarchy of cash flow keep us on track with moving towards that throughout our entire lifetime.
Yes, it does. And I've seen it help a ton of people so far. So I'm glad we have that as a resource and a tool to be able to help and serve our clients with. Well, this was an excellent conversation. I hope everyone finds this beneficial. I'll put a link to the actual hierarchy of cash flow in the box below. And we do want to remind you, we are still giving out the Quality of Life Nurse Award. So if you know a nurse who is improving the quality of life of others, whether it be their patients, other nurses, their community, feel free to nominate that nurse for the Quality of Life Nurse Award. We will be giving that award out on the first Thursday of every month at 12 p.m. Central. That nomination link will be in the box below as well. Until next time, take care. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.
Thanks, Leah.
Thank you.